Okay, so I got the parrot, the macaw. I've got a blank piece of paper. And if I was trying to draw realistically, this is an easier way to do it than not having a reference right next to me. So there's my macaw. I'm going to try and copy his shapes. And side by side, so I'll look at this. There's an oval. There's an oval here. So I'm going to start with that. You know, where is it on the page? How far does its tail come out? How far over? So I'm over a little bit on my page. I'm going to do an oval right here. I'm drawing light because I'm going to be erasing and adjusting. You are going to draw light. I'm going to push down a little harder because you probably can't even see it if I don't do that. So I'm starting with the oval shape here. And then I'm going to start with an oval shape that's going to represent his head area. So even though we're trying to draw realistically, it takes a lot of skill, practice, and patience. So we're trying to improve. And even though we might not think that our picture is all the way realistic at the end, it will be better than if we hadn't been looking side by side like this. So I'm going to try and get the neck coming down a little bit here. And the neck coming down a little bit in front. So I'm thickening up that part. I didn't really want it to look like two eggs on top of each other. So here comes the neck. Okay, so I'm going to think about where the wing is. So I'm looking at the wing shape now. See how it comes in a little upside, like a little cane shape there, down this way. And I'm going to draw right through where this is. So, you know, maybe that's where the perch is, but I'm going to draw right through it. So here comes the wing. You know, it's down below the neck a little bit here. And remember, I'm adjusting. So if I'm not happy with what I do, I'm going to be fixing it later. And you really, with this kind of drawing, you have to fix it later because every time you add something, you have to go back and adjust. You'll decide, oh, I made, now that I added the beak, the head doesn't look right or something like that. And then we have to keep adding and adjusting. Okay, so we've got this sort of shape here that represents the wing. And now we got to think about the tail. So we're coming down this way. Where's the angle of the tail? It's kind of, it's not straight up and down. There's straight up and down. It's a slight angle. And the wing, slight angle too. So I'm going to do a tail coming down kind of like this. And I can draw right through the branch. I don't have to do a bump and jump because I'm drawing lightly and I'm going to erase it later. So coming down for the tail. And then it needs to be longer. So I just noticed that there was a shape here and then there's a shape here. Basically the tail's coming down that long. So here's how long his body is. His wing's about the same length. Let's see. Here's how long his body is. My wing's about the same length. Here's how long his body is. His tail is a little bit longer than his body. Body, tail. So I think that I'm about right on those proportions. Okay, next we're going to try and get that beak. So the beak is very distinctive. When you look at it, it's coming almost straight down. Look at that. It's not a beak that sticks out this way like when we did the toucan. It comes straight down. So I'm going to look at that. I'm going to think. The beak's kind of coming down this way, but it's got this curve. And it also has this angle here. So maybe I'll try and get that angle first. There's kind of this angle where the beak touches the face, where it attaches to the face, comes down. But it's not a straight line, right? It's got a curve around, curves around, and it's got a point on the end. So where does it come here? How far is it from here to here? It's kind of halfway. So there's this part of the beak, that part of the beak. I'm going to try and curve it a little bit because that curves a bit. Look at that. It actually comes kind of straight and then it curves. I just noticed. Sort of straight and then it curves. So you can see how I'm going to have to adjust a lot as I go. And even as I'm looking at my drawing, I could have done this curve in more. So for you, you're looking at this, you're looking at how I'm interpreting it, but even as I go, I start noticing, oh, I didn't quite get it. So I've got to keep erasing and moving things a little bit. Now these guidelines are not going to stay. For me, it's going to be really hard for me to erase and make his neck one piece because I drew really hard. But for you, you should be able to erase your light lines and not have them show at all. Making his wing hole now too. So on his beak, his bottom part of his beak is shorter. Look at that. It's kind of a little wedge right in here. So curving it around, and it looks like this little rounded wedge there. I won't need the guidelines anymore in there, so I can get rid of those. Trying to clean up his beak a bit so I don't see all that stuff, and now it's trying to look more whole there. The beak is really tricky. Right, now let's analyze some more. So think about, we've got the beak, we've analyzed the beak, got shorter down here, longer up here. We made it like a wedge and pointing pretty far down. But now look, let's look at his head. This is where I started the oval, but look, his head actually comes out a little bit there. So I'm gonna come out a little bit this way, and then it's kind of flat up there. So I'll just come out this way and then blend it in that way. So now I've changed the top of his head, the look of that. So you can do that with yours. Check the top of the head because we made it really round when we were sort of estimating the shapes. But now we're coming in, especially as we start adding the details, we start to see where we need to move stuff. So I like that better. I'm going to erase this line because I like that. Looks much more realistic than the one I had before. I could even get more, I'm already seeing how I can get more fussy about it, but if you can imagine, people spend hours on realistic drawing. They spend hours and hours, and they spend years learning how to do it. So we're just trying to improve. Okay, so I need things to help me map up. I need little landmarks as I'm drawing. So one of my landmarks could be, well, the beak, the shape of the head. Now, I think I'll use this design here to help me figure out the eye. So here's his beak. Halfway through, this design starts. Does it go all the way to the top of his head? No. The red could be like the negative space here. I could think about that. It goes from the middle of his beak, goes up a little bit, over a little bit. Does it go kind of a little bit past the beak down here? So let me try this down here. And it's a kind of a shield shape. But I also see it goes up a little bit in the middle. But I think this will get me started. So I've made myself another landmark to help get the eye in place. Okay, where's the eye in terms of this shape? The eye is kind of in the middle of that shape, and it's got a black part, and it's got a little line of color around it, and this white shape actually comes up a little bit here. So I can adjust that shape now that I've got the eye in. Let's think about how that's looking. When you look at that, like when I look at that, I can see, oh, well, now it looks like I need to make this a little bit bigger here. Look at that, how that goes up. So it's kind of like every time we have a landmark to go by, we can start looking around, see if there's anything else we need to adjust. If I had drawn everything, like made his head perfect, then tried to draw his body, notice how I'm kind of building it up slowly from all around. I would have this beautiful head and then the body would be all out of proportion. So I'm trying not to get too detailed in one area, um, and trying to get it all my landmarks together before I start, making it perfect and drawing darker. Can't give him a little bit more tummy down here, I think. All right, so let's try and do those feet next. So his body, I've got a branch for reference here. Looks like one foot's kind of right under the wing, right here. He's got one toe's longer. I am going to erase some of this stuff. His foot's going to go right over that. Then I can decide how fat that perch is. So right under his wing, under his belly there's one longer toe, making a little skinny shape there for his one toe. And then the other toe is a little bit shorter. So I'm going to come in a little closer, not quite as long on that one. And I can put a little claw at the end. I'm kind of abbreviating his feet, by the way. I didn't really make them as realistic as I could, but I think I'm good enough there for the feet. And I'm trying to make them come up a little bit because they're overlapping. Same thing, he's got one long toe. He's got one shorter toe. If I didn't know that, and I was just drawing from my imagination, I might remember that a parrot has two toes in front, but I would not have noticed that one is shorter than the other unless I looked at a picture and did some research. Okay, there's the top. And I don't have to make it that thick. I could make the branch thinner. I could make it more like a real branch instead of a perch if I want to. So I'm thinking next we can work on the feathers. Here we go. Let's think about the wings here. Erase your guidelines. See how hard it is for me to erase these because I drew so hard? But you should have an easy time because you're drawing light. I don't even want this line in there, and I already drew the feet, which is hard to get around. All right, that seems not too bad. Here's my wing. I've got short feather section. I've got medium feather section, and I've got longer feather section. So short feather section, medium feather section, long feather section. So I am now simplifying those feathers. I'm just drawing some short feathers there. Medium feathers are coming in next, so I could draw lines or I could draw little curves like that for the feathers. Even though I'm not drawing the feathers perfectly, I am being observant because I happen to notice that there's at least 3 different layers of different kinds of feathers. So now that I'm here, here's my long feathers. I might want to give it a little bit extra there. Long feather, long feather. Overlapping. Go. If I want to show more feather, I can make that thinner. Tail feathers are coming next. I'm looking at 2 different sections here for the tail. I see a wedge here, and I see like the extra fancy feathers that come down longer. On this macaw, it has a, look at that, should be a normal tail right there, right? It's got this whole extra part. So I'm going to think about this wedge of feathers and this wedge of feathers. So let's get some lines for this shorter feathers here and then some lines for these longer feathers here. Probably just a couple because there's not like a ton of those feathers. Yes, those of you who like to analyze all the details could know, like if you were a a natural history artist or scientific illustrator, you would know. You'd have to know exactly how many feathers. You'd have to know. You can't just guess like we're doing right now. But for our purposes today, we're just trying to get the proportions of a macaw and make it look realistic enough that we have improved. Okay, how are we doing out there now?